Welcome to the MyCom webinar. For today, I'm so excited to be with you. My name is Ben Ward. I work with News for United Methodist Communications. I do digital media and design. So anything you see on the news site or our digest emails, anything that you see usually comes through me and the team that I'm a part of. And so I'm very excited to be sharing with you today about podcasting for churches and ministries. We're going to start at the beginning. We're going to go step by step. We're going to just lay the foundation for what is podcasting? Why would I want to do it? If I already have one, how can I make it better? What are the tools that are currently available and helpful? Because as you know, if you've been out there, this changes regularly, like by the week. And so something that you learned a couple of years ago might become outdated, or you might need something new. So we're going to talk through all of that today. So I'm so excited to be with you. Thank you for joining us, podcasting for churches and ministries. So let's just dive right in. So podcasting is and has been incredibly popular. If you didn't know, we've been around for 20 years, basically. It began with the iPod. Do you remember those? Before the iPhone, we had something that played music, played files before streaming, all of these connectivity issues. And so it begins with the iPod. That's where we get the name podcasting from, obviously. A great definition of a podcast is a digital audio or video program available to stream or download on demand. Episodes cover topics ranging from news and education to true crime and pop culture. Common formats include interview shows, roundtable discussions, narrative storytelling, and video podcasts filmed in studio settings. So that covers basically everything, right? So if you think of radio programs of the past, that's really where podcasts started. But we live in an on-demand world. And so we want to watch the shows on Netflix or wherever when we want to watch them instead of being dictated to on a schedule. And so podcasts really fill that vacuum. They really give us that opportunity to listen when we want to listen, to watch when we want to watch. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And so that's what it is. Apple, back in 2005, really gave podcasting a platform. People were already using the iPod for this reason. And so they reluctantly provided a directory to search, find, and listen to these audio programs. And so many churches at this time shifted their sermon archive to podcasting. So instead of, I don't know how long you've been around, but we used to burn CDs or make a cassette tape, copy the tape of the sermon so that the congregation could listen to the message in the week if they missed it or if they wanted to review it again. And around this time, churches were really a trailblazer in the podcasting platform because they shifted to putting their sermons online and providing them as podcasts. And so this is actually our first little nugget of knowledge here is how do podcasts how are they distributed? And their feeds. So if you hear this was in my podcast feed, this comes from a technology called RSS, or really simple syndication. And so at the time, this is once again dating me, but in the early days of the internet, we had RSS feeds of news. So if you think of Google Reader was an old one, or even today, people still use it. It's called Feedly. And that's just text. And when there's a new article posted, it shows up in a feed. And so what they started doing around this time was attaching audio to these feeds. And so you have RSS. This is the way that a podcast makes its way to the directories. Apple is not hosting all of these audio files for the podcast. They're just a directory that points to your server, either the one you have or the one that you pay someone else to host your podcast audio. And so it points to that. So it's just a big directory. Spotify is the same way. YouTube is the same way as well. And so this works well for everyone. It works well for the content providers, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, because they get content and then they don't have to pay to host it. You pay to host it. And if there's a problem, it's with you, not with them. And so it's grown into this really great ecosystem that is decentralized And so in this day and age on the internet, so much consolidation, so many things where it's a walled garden, where if you want your content to get out of there, you've got to go through a gatekeeper in some way. Podcasting is like an open world. It is a decentralized place. And oftentimes the corporations don't have as much control over these, and that's something they don't necessarily like, but it's good for us because if we have a podcast, we can put it out there, we can distribute it, we can point people to it, and all of these platforms, they provide a space where people can find it. So you think of it almost as a search engine. So that's a little bit of an introduction to what podcasting is, and I hope even if you've been around for a while and you know a lot about podcasts, I hope you learned a little something for that. So let's talk about, as we dive in, we're going to do some quick rapid fire stats. And most of these are pulled from Riverside, and we're going to talk about providers in a little while, hosting and places to edit online, all of these things. And so there's a place called riverside.fm, and they have just compiled a bunch of stats at the end of 2025. And so I really felt like this would be a great way to rapid fire. We're going to go through a lot of them, and most of them will be on the screen for you to see as well. But this is going to be a great place for you to just kind of get a taste of what is happening in the world of podcasting. And as I said at the beginning, these things change weekly, daily sometimes. And so it's good to have a snapshot, even if you've heard it before. So we're going to start with this. So podcast listening is growing rapidly. So more than 584 million people listen to podcasts in 2025. That's a lot of people, with numbers expected to reach 619 million in 2026. So engagement is high. 34% of Americans listen to an average of 8.3 podcast episodes per week, and 83% spend more than 9 hours listening weekly. These are the people you are going after if you want to have a podcast with your church or your ministry. These are the people. Video is redefining the podcast landscape. More than half of shows are now posting full video on YouTube. And if you haven't seen this, people watch podcasts on YouTube. And not just what we'll talk about a little bit more later as well. It's just sort of a static screen with the audio, but the actual video of an interview or someone giving like this right here, just someone you can watch. On YouTube, it is a video format. It is a visual format. And podcasting traditionally was an audio format. I listened to it by myself, usually in headphones or while cooking or in the car on a commute. So it's really redefining all these video podcasts are. So podcasting is a booming industry, and the market is projected to be worth $17.59 billion by 2030. So I know probably most of our audience here today is not looking to cash in on the billions to be made in podcasting. We have a greater mission, actually. We're trying to share our message and the message of Jesus and the church with as many people as possible, and to engage our community. And so, but that just gives you a little taste of where it is. So let's do a few more stats here. How many people listen to podcasts? In 2025, there were more than 4.58 million podcasts, and this number is only growing. So you must remember this when you decide to do a new podcast. You are one of lots and lots and lots of them, many being added by the minute, by the day, by the week. As of 2025, 73% of Americans have watched or listened to a podcast at least once in their lives, an increase from 67% in 2024. This is an estimated 210 million Americans. Of Americans who had watched a podcast, 55% had watched or listened in the last month, and 40% in the past week, an increase of 8% and 6% year over year. So it's just continuing to go. How many people listen to podcasts in 2026? The number of podcast listeners worldwide will grow to 619 million. The amount of time people spend listening to podcasts has increased by 355% in the last 10 years. The United States and Canada have the highest number of podcast listeners, but China and Latin America are predicted to surpass them between 2025 and 2026. Young people are the most avid podcast consumers. 66% of U.S. people aged 12 to 34 and 61% of people 35 to 54 are monthly podcast listeners. In 2025, 45% of women said they listened to a podcast in the last week compared to 32%. So just look at what's happening. All of these things, more and more and more. In 2024, more than half of monthly podcast listeners had a part-time or full-time job, 63%, and owned a home. So it just gives you a taste of the people. These are people in our community. These are people that we want to speak to and to reach and to be in community with. 51% of podcast listeners have college degrees compared to 46% of the general U.S. population. 17% of podcast listeners are early adopters of new products, and that's a different sort of demographic. Asia Pacific, the Middle East, and Africa are home to some of the most engaged podcast audiences. South Africa leads the pack with 66% of consumers listening at least an hour per week, followed by Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, and the United Arab Emirates. And I can testify to this. I have a podcast myself that I had since 2018. It's on a little bit of a hiatus right now called Morning Prayer and Worship. It's a devotional podcast. And a lot of my listeners I have engaged listeners in Nigeria, all over Africa, all the Saudi Arabia as well, Indonesia, all of these things, these percentages, they all showed up and had engaged listeners, people sending me prayer requests, sending me all of these things all over the world. This is a way to reach people in all kinds of places, not just in your immediate community. So just a few more. As of September 2025, Apple Podcasts, 37% of listeners, and Spotify, 32% of the top platforms for listening to audio-only podcasts. Now, both Apple and Spotify now support video, so we'll see that in a few minutes, but those are the two top platforms for audio. Keep that in mind. And for video podcasts, I think you probably know the most used platform is Apple Podcasts, followed by YouTube. But this is quickly changing. YouTube is the place for video podcasts going forward. Most people prefer consuming podcasts on their smartphone. So think about it. Whenever you're making anything, they are looking at it on their phone. We have this discussion all the time at News because in a job where you're working, you're usually looking at your laptop or your computer at your desk. But I always try to keep in mind that most people are reading our digest, the News Digest, on their phone. Let's be real about this, right? So think about that with podcasts. They're listening on the go with their phone. Even if they're at home, they're going to mirror it, AirPlay it to some sort of device in their home to listen to, okay? And so computer also is a place where you can do that. Smart TVs are also used for video podcasts. So think of YouTube. I know at my house, we have YouTube on our TVs. We watch that mostly. We don't have cable. So we watch YouTube and Netflix and all of these things. And so any sort of podcast like that, we would watch as a TV program almost. It's not even a thought of, I'm going to listen to or watch a podcast. It's actually there. Okay. And now here's an important stat. There are 4,584,954,000. Wow, that's a big number. There are over 4 billion podcasts out there. These are real podcasts with at least 3 episodes, each lasting 3 minutes. So these are not just somebody who saved a space with a name. These are actual podcasts. 82,184 new shows are launched every 3 days. That's an average of 27,000 new shows every day. So like I was talking about, if you're going to get into this, you know that you have a lot of competition. While Spotify claims to have nearly 7 million podcast titles on its roster, Apple Podcasts only lists 2,877,261 valid podcasts. These numbers likely include many inactive shows. Lots of people have great ideas. Lots of people start stuff, and this speaks to our situation in churches, but a lot of people don't follow through, and a lot of people stop after a while. So the year with the highest growth of new podcasts was 2020. And then there was a decline from 2022 on. If we can think back to COVID, everyone was at home. Everybody started a podcast there. Okay, great. Awesome. So I want to look at the top podcast genres, okay? So if we look at this stat on the screen here, this comes from Edison. Comedy is the number 1 genre. So I don't know if Podcasts for Churches and Ministries, if you're looking to launch a comedy podcast, but that is the number one genre. Society and culture, news is really, really high. True crime. So if you've ever listened to something like Serial or something like that. Sports. So if you're a sports person and you listen to podcasts and commentary, people will listen for hours to that. Education. business, health and fitness, religion and spirituality. So that's number 9. So that's important for us because that's where most of our podcasts would fall into, is in that category. TV and film, and it goes on: music, arts, history, science, on and on. So as you can see there, so religion and spirituality is number 9, which is a high ranking for this. I did read a statistic and I couldn't flesh it out, so I didn't include it in here, but that really, if you take all the churches doing sermon podcasts, that religion and spirituality genre would rocket to the top as far as availability. So it's really, really a space that you can be in, that you want to be in as well. All right, so that's our stats hot take. These are all the things. I did want to pull up just for a second before we leave these stats, and I'm going to actually go out to my browser here so that I can show you what we have. Let's see. We are going to do just a little bit. I want you to know, you should know when you're making a podcast who the popular people in the genres are. So let's talk about top podcasts overall. This is on Spotify. Joe Rogan is number 1, and I'm sure you've heard of his. I mean, it's everywhere. The Daily from the New York Times. Now, this is important, and you'll hear a little bit of a taste of it, but at News, we're doing a new podcast, and I've taken a lot of inspiration from The Daily by the New York Times. It's great. It traces its roots back to something called Radio Lab, which is a public radio show, which is a big podcast now as well, with lots of sound design, clips from the news, music even, to frame the news. And so you see some of these other ones here. Some of them are political. Some of them are just talking heads. Crime Junkie, there's that true crime genre as well. And so, so these are there. Now, I want to go to our religion and spirituality, okay? So this includes it's not just Christianity. It's not just our particular stream. This is everything. So if we think right here, the number 1, I don't even know this one, to Be Better Every Day. But then the second one, I think, is Catholic, the Bible in a Year. So this is where we get into, there's different genres within this genre, right? So here is a sort of daily devotional podcast, which is very high, number 2. Life of Wisdom, obviously this is outside of our stream. The Bryce Crawford podcast, I believe that is sort of a commentary, teaching kind of thing. Then we've got some of the more well-known, at least in some circles, speakers and things like that. Bible Recap, there we go. That's more of a, when we're talking about particular devotionals and teaching and stuff like this. There's our first church right there, which is number 11, 2819 Church. I'm not familiar with that. Some of you may be, but that's a church with the teaching that's there. And so then we get into Joel Osteen, some of these just more celebrity driven, Tim Keller sermon podcast, The Bible Project, if you know from YouTube, they have a podcast as well. And so they're very high on the list, and they sit down and they talk about how they go through and make the episodes. So it's a kind of behind the scenes. Then you got some of the larger mega churches, Elevation and things like that. 10-minute Bible Talks devotional Bible study you see here. So there's a wide range, very diverse. Life, church, all of these things right here. So what I wanted to give is a taste here of the things that you can do. Because if you're starting with, hey, we do put our sermons out online, we do have this podcast, and that's great. You should. That's where you should start. But where is there a place where you might say, our leadership, our pastor might like to have this sort of show where they talk about this, or they engage people in our community even, and they engage issues of the day. They go deeper on what they talked about on Sunday. There's all kinds of things that you can do right here. Devotional. I have a particular fondness for this because I've had a podcast for a long time talking about devotional podcasts, but people really engage with that. They're looking for something. I had lots of people. My podcast is about 20 minutes long, and that was just enough time for some people on their commute. And so that's a great, great place to go as well. Okay, so let's shift gears just a little bit. I'm going to go back here, and let's get back to our slides. Let's talk about planning and ideation, okay? So let's go over here. Great. So as we talk about all of these things, and I hope I've given you a lot to chew on there, a lot to chew on. What kind of show should you make? who is the audience? So let's think about this for a second. So you've got different kinds of audiences. So would you make a show for outreach, to bring people into your church, into your community, to share a message of whatever is on your heart as a church, compassion, mercy, kindness, justice, all of these things, issues of the day, or theological issues? What is it? Would you do an outreach kind of a podcast? Would it be education? Would you do teaching? And this is where the sermon podcasts fall into line. But there's so much more opportunity for sitting down and say, let's if your pastor wants to break down different theological concepts, that would be a great podcast, especially if they're engaging in that way and they can in that format. It works really well. Sermons, we've already talked about as well. Kids or parents. If you didn't notice, toward the end of that top 20 of genres of podcasts, we have kids and family. And so when you're on road trips and stuff like this, that's a great genre of podcast. They're stories, they're acted out. And a lot of you are already doing this in Sunday school, right? You're doing the stories, you're telling the Bible stories, you're having conversation and discussion, and it wouldn't be a far leap to produce a show in which your church family could have those kinds of resources when they go on a road trip, or they're going from activity to activity, something fun and entertaining that maybe ties in with what you're doing on Sunday. That would be a great idea for a podcast. But literally, the sky is the limit. As we talk about all those numbers over and over again, there is just so much possibility if this is something that is on your heart. The other question you need to ask in this planning and ideation phase is do you have the support or bandwidth to make it happen? Because this takes a lot of time. I'm just going to tell you, right? And like anything, you have to count the cost before you start. So what are you going to do? What support do you have? Do you have a team of people? Is there staff or volunteers? Is there somebody who just loves podcasts who'd be like, oh, I'd love to work on a podcast, love to be a part of something like that? The technical resources that you need. Sometimes we have great ideas and we can come up with great content, but we need somebody to help us with the technical aspect of it today. Even today, I've got lots of help in this room right here making this webinar happen. And so it will take a lot of your time. It will take more time than you think. And I'm an idea guy, so I'm like, we can do that. We can do that. We'll have it out by next week. No way. It's going to take more time than you think, okay? Way more, okay? There are no small projects is one of my favorite phrases that I tell myself. I almost use it as a little mantra. There are no small projects. I'm thinking of my house. I want to do this in the bathroom, or I want to paint this, or I want to do that. There are no small projects. It's just going to take a lot of time, and you need to count the cost for that. Is this something that you have the bandwidth to do? And here's the most important thing in this area. You need to love the idea and the idea of working on it. You will be spending a lot of time. And so if you don't love the idea, if you're just like, that's kind of cool, we should do that. Or somebody who's like, we should have a podcast. You are going to fall off. All those podcasts that are abandoned on the services, the directories, that's usually what happens. And you just cannot keep it up. Now, we can talk about there are seasons. And so if you want to do a 6-episode season of something, that's valid. And then you're not committing to more than that. Or if you want to say, but if all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to do a daily podcast. We're going to have a daily devotional podcast. It's going to be 10 minutes long, and we're going to have no breaks because everybody needs to do a devotion every day, and we have no end game in sight. I can almost guarantee you that you're going to stop doing that. Because there is no season. And we think even this is a sort of a spiritual concept, right? That we have seasons. There are seasons in our year. There are seasons in the church calendar. There are seasons for doing things. So I like to approach things like that. In this new News podcast that we're launching called Signs of Life, we're going to do a 5 or 6 episode season. And then we're going to take a break and see where we are and see what worked and what didn't work, how people responded and how they didn't respond. I think it's really, really, really important to do that. Okay, let's move on to production now. So we've had planning and ideation. Let's talk about actually producing the podcast, okay? Ways to record audio. So this is very important. So you have to make a decision, first of all, are you going to do video and audio or just audio? I have a special place in my heart for audio podcasts because you don't bring a couple of things from video with you, which is the psychological component. I knew I was going to be on camera today, so I had to think about, wow, does my shirt look okay? Did I iron it? Do I look okay? I don't want to be embarrassing, right? So I have to bring that component to it. If you're interviewing, you have to get two people in the same room. You have to have a nice setup. You need some lighting of some kind. You need really the higher the production value in some way. It doesn't have to go over the top, but it does invite people to watch. So it brings that component to it. It also brings the psychological component to it. If I'm able to just look at my laptop and have a sweatshirt on and just really think about what is going on, just the sound, that is a different experience altogether than I need to look at the camera like I'm looking at you now, and I need to really engage you. That's a different kind of recording. That's a different kind of production. And I think it's important that you consider. I loved with my devotional podcast to imagine people on a walk with headphones in that were engaging with what I had music and scripture readings and all these kinds of things. And it was a very intimate kind of thing, right? I was kind of just speaking. We were doing something that was devotional in nature. And it was really a special time in that way. Video is completely different. If I'm sitting here with a guitar and I've got lights all around and you're watching it, say on your phone or on your smart TV or things like that, it's just a different kind of thing. Both valid, both good, but different. And I think it's important that you consider this when you talk about production. So let's talk about audio first. So there are several ways to record audio. Logic, which is a Mac program, GarageBand, sort of Logic's little brother, that's a little bit easier to use, but is a great fully functional thing. Pro Tools, if you really are in sort of audio production world, or if you have a music background, and Audacity is a free program that you can use that is a great recorder of audio. And as a matter of fact, it works really well if it's just particularly one voice or two voices or things like that. You can even use your phone. We have a voice memo app on all of our phones, whether it be iOS or Android, and you can do that. The audio sometimes is not the greatest, and especially the noise around you, but with the addition of a little mic or something like that, which you see on TikTok a lot, people love to hold them, which is hilarious to me. It's sort of a social media shtick these days, but those are meant to be pinned to your shirt. But there's a lot of great things you can do with your voice memo app. And especially when you're just starting out, you need a mic of some kind. Okay. So this is, the granddaddy of all podcasting mics, the Shure SM7. I think this is an A, right? There's a B as well. But these are great mics. You don't necessarily need this. They have a USB version these days of this mic. But also one mic I used for a long time was the Blue Yeti. It's a USB mic. It's a great mic. And especially once I show you some of these tricks you can do in your audio processing, what we call a DAW, a digital audio workstation like Logic or GarageBand. But you need a mic of some kind. Even if you're going to just use your phone, you need some kind of mic to make the audio better. I remember my first film class I ever took. He was like, I'm going to tell you what the most important component of filming is, and that's the audio. And he said, I've seen people have beautiful cinematography, beautiful this, and their audio was so bad, I quit watching it. Your audio is so, so important. And when we're talking about podcasting, which is an audio first format, then we want our audio to be good. So let's talk about ways to record video. Now, you can get great video with phones these days. I mean, great video, especially if you know a little bit about lighting and you're paying attention to shadows, and there's even add-ons you can do, different lenses and things in diffusion that you can put to make the video even better. If you have a tripod, if you have something, there's so many great things you can buy even on Amazon now with just a desk tripod with a little light on it that holds your phone. You can do great video that way. You can get a little bit more robust with sort of a DSLR or mirrorless camera that uses lenses and this type of thing, and you can make stuff look really beautiful and good. But that does require an uptick in knowledge. You can borrow from your live streaming setup. if you're in a church, most likely through the past few years, you've started live streaming. So how are you doing that? Can you borrow a camera from that? Can you borrow a switcher from that? Can you borrow, something from that whole setup? And how can you do it? And so that might be resources that you have that don't require any investment, honestly. If you're going to do video, you need some sort of set or background. Here we have a TV, we have the desk. It's real simple. The mic is part of the set even. And so, you got to have a set though, because people are going to be looking at you. And so you have to decide what kind of podcast it's going to be. Is it going to be multicam? Like I said, if you're borrowing from live streaming, maybe you have a couple cameras. And if you have two guests, like say you have an interview and you're sitting on each side of this table, then you could have, a camera on each person, or if you had three, one that shows both of you. And that just requires more time though, because most of the time you've got to take all that footage, you've got to sync the audio, you've got to do some switching, you've got to use a program then at that point, Final Cut or Premiere or something like that, and you've got to actually edit the footage. And so that's a big consideration in there. Are you going to do live recording? I love a good podcast, especially if it's a video podcast that you can stream live on YouTube or Facebook while you're recording it and then do the edit for the podcast later. I think it's a great option. So I want to show you just a little bit while we're here. I'm going to show you a little bit of a Logic session. I use Logic most of the time. I have a music background. I went to Berklee College Music, and so I used Pro Tools for a long time. But Logic was so great and so seamless in my workflow. So I hope you can see that on the screen there. This is Logic Pro. This is a very affordable program from Apple, and so it only works on Mac. So if you're on Windows, we'll find something else. But the basic principles, they work in both places, and so. This is the UM News podcast that we are going to do. So I want to just give you a lay of the land. Now, we're not going to listen to a lot of it because that's really not the point of this. I want to just give you a peek under the hood of what you're talking about if you want to produce something that has lots of layers, okay? So this was an interview. So you'll see Ben over here. That's me. And then I interviewed Daniel Hawkins. And so this is his. So we did it use something called Riverside, which I'm going to show you in a minute, which was a way for us to record our interview remotely, but still have good quality. So they allow you to record in 4K. They allow you to have different audio tracks, which is really important. Because what's going to happen is that if we're in the same room, you have another consideration. And so if I had two people sitting here, this mic is going to pick up this speaker, but it's also going to pick up the noise from this speaker and vice versa. And so, but when you're remote, it's actually a little bit easier to mix if you both have good mics. And so right here, we were that. He was in Texas. I was in Alabama where I live. And so we each have our own track here here's all my, as you can see at the top right here, here's all my audio, here's all Dan's audio. And then I want to show you, because this had a lot of sound design, and I'll provide a link. Hopefully we're launching this week with this podcast, so you can listen to it there. But we have music. So I had some music that I had composed. So I use music a lot in this. So now I have another track down here with my music. So as you can see, it's underscore in some areas. And I go all the way to the end here, and I've got the ending part for the big finale. And then I'm going to look right here. So I call these interstitial pieces, and I've got 3 different tracks: interstitial 2, and 3, out of order, of course. When you get creative, you go a little bit crazy. And so what these are is, so at the beginning here, I mentioned some news that's happened in the world. And so I pulled clips from news stories. So I pulled just different things that illustrate what I'm talking about. They give sort of support to it. And then over here, Dan is talking about, he's a pastor of a church. And he has a podcast, Pod Strangely Warmed. This is a podcast, so you should check it out. But he talks about things that happen in their church. And so what I did was I pulled some services of theirs from YouTube, their live stream services. And when he would mention certain things, I would play as a part of that the different pieces from his service to just illustrate, give support. So these are what we call production values. And this makes it more interesting to listen to. Okay. So I want you to remember that. If you think of those over 4 billion podcasts out there, what is going to set yours apart when someone comes to it? What is going to make them stay and not just fast forward to the next thing? what is going to help you in that? And so these are some of the things. So this just gives you a lay of the land right here. I want you to see. So if I go to my track right here, I clicked on Ben. Over here, I've got all the things I did to make it sound better. Okay. So I've got, just to give you an example, I use this for all my audio nerds out there. This is one of my favorite plugins, the SSLG series. If you're not an audio nerd, just skip this. You can just skip to the next part. But this is an EQ. It's like an old mixing board, right? It's just a channel from a console. And so I use the compressor here, and I use the things. And the great thing about this day and age, if you go in GarageBand or any of these things, is you've got presets. So I'm going to show you this. I didn't use a preset because I paid way too much money at school to learn how to do it, but you can do it. A lead vocal, you can have a dialogue. There's presets that you can already use. You don't have to do this from scratch. So I use that. I used something called a de-esser. So if you'll all these S's, I'm sure it sounds amazing over here because AJ is helping me out right here. So you don't have that problem. But if you've ever spoken on a microphone and you're doing the great old test word was sibilance. There's a great old SNL skit with Tom Hanks where they do sound check and he's going sibilance. And it's just to test those S's. They can be really offensive to listen to. And I want you to think about somebody with headphones on for a second. And so that de-esser does that. And so I also use just a little bit of reverb to put myself in a room, so I'm not just completely dry, but just a little bit, not like a music project. And then I have this great plugin called Vocal Writer. It's one of my favorite as well. So basically, as I get softer, it raises the volume. As I get louder, it lowers the volume. It's a complement to a compressor, basically. And so you don't need to do all of this. I just want to show you, if you do want to take a step into this world, these are the things that make it better. Okay, these are the things that you can do. And so when all of that is done, I take my time, I bounce it down, and then I have my audio file. So I do it in an MP3 format, and so I'm able to then go to the next step. So I want to show you. I just hit the microphone. I do apologize. But so that's Logic. Now I want to show you a little something else. I want to show you Riverside, which is an online tool that is actually pretty affordable. You can do it at a basic plan for about $30 a month, and they have their own editor as well. So these are just some projects that I've worked on. This is that interview I did with Dan. So I'm going to click on it, and it took the audio, and it has something similar. So I'm going to click Edit, and I just want to show you. Okay, so I pulled up my editor in Riverside, and what's great about this is, if you'll notice, it used AI to make a transcription. And so as I'm editing my audio, I can click on a word, and it will take me in my audio to that place. So I'm going to go way down here. Oh, I don't like that word because. Well, look, there it is in my audio editor right there. I can split these. These are the combined. If you'll notice the pink and the yellow, one is me and one is Dan. And so we have all of these things. There, it has something called, it has AI tools and co-creator, which it basically does a lot of those things I was showing you in Logic, but it does it for you. And then you can decide if you like it and you can tweak it. And so honestly, if you're just starting out, you don't have to go to school and become an expert audio editor. You can use something like this to get something really good. And so I am a big, if you've watched this webinar before and you've seen Ryan Dunn, who does a lot of our podcasts here at MyCom, you know that he is a big Riverside proponent and he loves this. As a matter of fact, we're considering using some of their hosting because they offer hosting now as well. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So I just want to give you a taste of Riverside. So there's Riverside. And the last thing we have to think about with production before we move on is artwork and branding. And I want to say, don't minimize this. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, they are search engines. And when someone searches for a church or a particular topic and your podcast comes up in the search results, you want your artwork to be good. Okay. Basically, podcast artwork is square. It's usually a minimum of 3,000 by 3,000 pixels. Make it good, engaging. There are lots of webinars and I think we had a branding one at MyCom before that you can watch to talk about that. Don't minimize that. Give yourself time after you've done all this work to launch your audio podcast or video podcast. Don't minimize the artwork and the branding. What's your name? How are people going to find it? All of these things are super, super important. Okay, so let's go back here and let's move on. All right. So let's talk about distribution for a minute, okay? We're going to, how do you get it? You have this great pack, you have this great artwork, you have this great audio file. Now, how are you going to get it out there? Remember at the beginning, we talked about RSS, really simple syndication. You have to get your podcast out there. You have to host it somewhere. I don't suggest hosting it yourself. I did that for several years. That's a job for a bigger company, okay? So there's Spotify for Podcasters, which is free. And it used to be Anchor.fm. They bought it and made it free because they want people to host with them. But when you host with Spotify for Podcasters, you don't just go on Spotify. They give you an RSS feed. You can submit to Apple, iHeartRadio, Audible, all the places you want to be. They're a great platform. I use that for my other podcast, Morning Prayer and Worship, and it's been fabulous. I love it, and it's free. So it's really great. Podbean is another popular one. Riverside, which we just saw. Buzzsprout is a really good one. Great support from Buzzsprout. I worked at a church where we use Buzzsprout for our sermons. Really great. So once you have a host, though, you have to submit the RSS feed to the different platforms. And this involves getting us iTunes, or I think they've changed the name now, Podcasting, Apple platform login, and you have to submit your RSS feed so it shows up in their directory. You have to do this on Spotify. Say you host with Buzzsprout, you have to go to Spotify and submit your RSS feed. And once you do that, though, you're distributed and you're everywhere. You can submit your RSS feed to YouTube. Even if it's just an audio podcast, they'll pull that podcast art and put that as the video. And I think you should do more than that, but that's something to at least get you started. And so you've distributed. Now, how will people know? How will people know to find you? How can they do it? So let's talk about now marketing and communication, okay? So you need to go through your church communication channels, all right? Do you have an email? Do you have a weekly email? Do you have social media channels? All of that should be used, should be utilized. You should be on a regular marketing plan with your church communication channels, okay? It should be just everywhere. Service slides, you should do all this. You can brainstorm. You should have a kickoff event, okay? After a service one week in the lobby, you should do something, have a table, a booth in the lobby where people talk about it. Do a live recording. If it's not just a sermon podcast, if you want to have we're going to, on a Tuesday night, we're going to do a live recording of our new interview show where we talk about theological concepts, okay? Do it. That's a way to get people to know about it and to tell other people about it. Buy ads. You can do this on social media. You can do this on other podcasts. You can do this on YouTube. And so that's a great way. Find podcasts that are like yours in your genre and buy some ads to be placed before and after and during their podcast. You can do that. You can do that. You continually communicate and promote. Build excitement about it. First of all, you have to be excited about it, but build excitement about it afterward. More listeners means more engagement. More episodes and more engagement means more consistency, okay? And the way to grow something is consistency. My devotional podcast, 5 days a week for a long time. And then when I couldn't sustain that for a little while, I had a season of my life, I did once a week. And it was great. It was a great way to stay engaged with people. Remember, think in seasons, but think consistency. Think we're going to do this for 6 months, but do it for 6 months, okay? And see how it goes and see if it's something that has value that is worthwhile. Okay, so you have it out there, you've marketed it, you're finding an audience, you're all these kinds of things. And so our last little section here is just analytics. So I want to give you just a taste. We're going to go one more time over here to Spotify for Podcasters. I'm going to show you behind the hood, okay? And so this is Spotify for Podcasters. Podbean, Riverside, all of these have an analytics dashboard. These are all, so if you'll notice here, if I use Spotify for Podcasters, they're going to give me a lot of detailed analytics for Spotify. Obviously, they have access to it. But they're also going to give me all the places that I'm available, okay? And so right here on Spotify, you see I have, it tells me how many followers, how many consumption hours, how many plays I've had. And really, that's the number I'm looking for in this particular dashboard is, how many plays have I had? This is the last 30 days. I'm on a hiatus now, so it's a little bit lower, of course. But here's all platforms. So this is everywhere I'm going. So all time, 159,000 plays per episode, average 250, which worked well for me as a daily podcast. That was something great. You'll see these quirks in online stats. What happened on this day, and can I have more of those days, right? So you just never know where the algorithm will take you, okay? So this is all things. So if I look, I've got 30 days. I've got the last 7 days. I've got 90 days here, okay? So see, I've had some upticks, just particularly searching days. And so then I can go weekly, monthly. So these are really, really great tools for us, okay? Now, one of the great things is I can go to my episode rankings, all right? So this particular one, just somehow the algorithm chooses it every time somebody searches for me. This old episode right here from 2023 always has the most, okay? And so then if you go down, it's just episode after episode. You can see which episodes are resonating with your audience, and that's super important, okay? And so this just gives you an idea. You should be looking at your analytics. What's working, what's not working, what's there. You'll hear a lot in the podcasting world, how many downloads did it have? And that really is talking about listens in that particular dashboard. How many listens are you getting? If you'll look here, I can break down my audience, okay? On this particular podcast is a heavily female audience. And then I look right here. My biggest in this podcast is 35 to 44, okay? I did want to, if we talked about the stats earlier, remember, these are skewing younger. It runs the gamut. But if you want to reach people who are in generations coming up, and this is something we have to think about as a church, how do we do that? This is a way to do that. You can do this. You can do this. So you have a analytics dashboard in YouTube as well. You can go specifically to Apple Podcasts and get just those stats also. So that's our analytics. All right. Let's jump back and do some concluding here. All right. I hope you guys, thank you for coming along for the ride with me today. This has been fun. I'm kind of a nerd in all this. I like nerdy stats. I like all the nerdy stuff. So I hope that you have as well. And I hope that it's been beneficial for you. And, each one of these sections we could break down and do 45 minutes on that, do an hour on that. And so maybe in the future we might do some of that. But podcasting is a wide open world if you have the heart, the idea, the enthusiasm for it, because you need all those things, because it's also a lot of work. In this day and age with social media and all, I ask a kid, do they want to be a doctor? Do they want to be this? I mean, I want to be a YouTuber, because they think it's, they like all the celebrity quote unquote around it, but they also we have a misconception that there's not as much work involved, but that's not true. These things take so much time and work. They are worth it, but you need to consider the cost. So if you have the heart for it, if your church does, if your leadership does, then I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to start with sermon podcasts. If you're not doing that already, you should put your sermons online. You should work on making the audio better. Some of those tools that we talked about, you can sweeten them. You can use EQ. You can use compression. You can use all those AI tools to make them sound better. So that, I don't know if you've ever tried to listen to a sermon, but it's, the volume's so low, you're turning it way up, and then you forget and you put another piece of music on, and your ears are bleeding from that. Let's not do that. Let's do better than that. Okay? We can start there. So start with your sermons, and then how can you package them? There are creative ways to package the sermons too. Take a section of it, take one point of the sermon and put it out there. Make it a social media graphic and meme or something like this, or a video. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with that ventures into the marketing territory. Talk with your pastors and leadership. Talk with them and ask them what they're thinking. Do they listen to podcasts? Because a lot of people are listeners. It's very, very important. What are they interested in? What would they like to talk about? Let me tell you, a pastor or a leader, one of the reasons they got into it is because they like to talk, okay? They like to share what's on their heart. That's why they did this in the first place. If you give them a platform for that, yet another platform, they're usually going to be like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. So let them run free. Let them work with them. This is also a great relationship building thing. And then, do you listen to podcasts? Sometimes people are like, yeah, podcasts are the latest thing. We should have a podcast. And they've never listened to any. They don't know what it's like to get in the commute and listen to the thing. You should become a consumer of podcasts. So it's not one of my favorite words, but in this case, take it in. Learn what you like, what you don't like. Learn what works well, what doesn't work well. I love news podcasts, so I'm producing a news podcast. I love music and worship, and so I made a music and worship podcast because I wanted to listen to it, right? Make something you would want to listen to. Okay? Make something you would want to listen to and listen to it sometimes. That's important. So thank you so much for joining me today. This was so fun, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A where we can kind of have some back and forth on this. My name is Ben Ward. I work for News, United Methodist Communications, MyCom. I'm so excited about it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me today. Bye-bye. All right, we are ready for Q&A. I hope that there was some useful information and all of that. I know it's a lot. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to stats and all the ins and outs. So thanks for hanging with me for a while. So I'm excited. We have some questions, and I hope to give some answers. And you can put questions in the chat. Keep putting it there in the Q&A section is the best spot for it. But I'd love to, even if you have a question about my answer, we can go from there as well. So let's get started. So our first one here is from Carol. And it's a great comment and question, which it's great that you can compose your own music to avoid copyright issues. But for the rest of us, where can we find music clips that are legal to use? This is a great question. And this goes for your videos, your YouTube videos. I'm sure you've run into it in your live stream. Even if you have a license from CCLI or one of these places, oftentimes you'll get flagged or muted on Facebook and that sort of thing. So it's very important to follow the laws and the rules and to know these platforms and how they do things. So first things, if you're doing a church podcast, if you're doing something in a ministry, look within your music ministries, first of all. Those might be some good places. Sometimes you would be surprised how many people now in this day and age with laptops and GarageBand and this sort of thing are composing music. So you might be able to collaborate together, which is a great thing. So I want to put that shout out as a musician. Don't overlook that. I'm going to give you some great places to look online, but try to find something original always. I mean, that's cultivate that in your church. You're creating something original in your podcast. And so look for the people around you that can help you. If you're doing a personal podcast, because I know a lot of people are interested in that as well, then look around you. Try to find friends to collaborate with. They're looking for outlets for their music. So it's sometimes more difficult than you think as a musician. Oh, I'll just put some of my songs on there. You have to find the right thing, but work together. I think that's a great place to start. So let me give you some practical places also. The first one is one of my favorite places to get just a wide range of stock music that is absolutely free. Like literally, it will not get flagged on YouTube. All of these things. It's a site, and we're going to send out a PDF to all the registered participants that has some of these links. So if you don't get this down now, don't worry, it's coming to you. But I'm just going to spell it out: ende.app, ende.app. Okay, this guy is just a Creative Commons, if you're familiar with that licensing. He makes music, and I'm telling you, he must release like 5 or 6 songs a day in every genre you can imagine. And some of them even are specifically for podcasts. So if you're looking for theme music, if you're looking for something that would work, I would highly suggest going there. Even you can register for free, and you can save your favorites, and you can do all kinds of things. I use it all the time, to be honest with you, because I hate getting those copyright notices and that sort of thing. So that's the first place I would start. To me, I'm going to give you my next best place is musicbed.com. That's the best paid place. They have a subscription. It's really great, a great place to start. They have amazing music, even from some artists you will recognize. And they have instrumental beds and that sort of thing. And then finally, I would do Epidemic Sound. Okay, so that's where I would go for music, but there's a lot of stuff to go there. Okay, then we had a question about Logic Pro, which I showed you, I demoed, and its difference with GarageBand. So if you're a Mac user, Logic Pro is the pro version of GarageBand. So they're going to really share a lot of the similar things, but you're going to be able to do a lot more in Logic than you are in GarageBand. Probably for podcasting, GarageBand will serve your purposes if you're just starting. Okay. There are other things. If you have the Adobe Suite subscription, Audition from Adobe is really great, especially if you've done some video editing in Premiere. That workflow is really seamless. That's true for Logic and GarageBand and Final Cut Pro too, if you're doing video there as well. So that's just a taste of it. And like I said, Audacity is a free program. You can do that. It's a little less user friendly, but once you start using it, it's not really hard. It's not difficult to do either. Okay, so let's keep going. I will say Amanda talked about she makes some music that she would be happy to, if anyone wanted to collaborate and maybe use some of her music in there. I think that's great. Thank you, Amanda. This is a great question from Heidi. Does a podcast have to qualify in some way to be carried on Spotify? Not familiar with the terms. And can you restate how to upload one's podcast to a host like Podbean or Buzzsprout? Okay, so you don't have to qualify to be on Spotify. You used to. So if you heard that, that was a long time ago when Spotify first started in podcasts. You had to have a certain number of listeners or that sort of thing. Now you can submit to Spotify. You can submit to Apple. There is no threshold for that. If you choose to go through a host like a Podbean or a Buzzsprout or Riverside, they will help you get on these platforms. You also can just submit individually. So if you upload, you get an account at Podbean, okay, and you sign up and you pay, you do whatever, you create your podcast, you put your artwork and that sort of thing. It gives you an RSS feed. Remember we talked about that? And that RSS feed can be copied. It can be gone. You can go to Apple, paste it in there. You can go to Spotify, paste it in there. Some of these services will help you do that. Okay, and that's one of the benefits of paying a service, is they will help you, walk you through the process, make sure it's there. But all of them do that. So I hope that that helps in some way. And so thanks, Stephen, for he said, good information. Thank you. I'm glad that it's been helpful. Couple more. So someone asked, besides a sermon podcast, which I talked about a little bit, what would be your first choice of a podcast for a church? I would probably choose some devotional related podcast, to be honest with you, related to a season of the church calendar. So Lent is perfect. We're in the middle of Lent, so it's a little late to start it this year. But if it gives you those parameters of I have a starting point and an ending point. So if you wanted to have and maybe get some people from the congregation to help do devotional type things, you could do a 40-day podcast during Lent and just try it and see how people respond to it. Start with your community, but you might find audience beyond that on the platforms, and that would boost you into something else. That's probably where I would start. So if you think back to school, it doesn't have to be just the church calendar, but if you have a back to school kind of thing, helping people get ready, teachers and students and faculty get in the right space spiritually for what's coming, that'd be a great thing to do. So, a 20-day countdown or something like that, or that sort of thing. So that's probably where I would start, because it gives you start, end point, and it can be really helpful in that way. That's where I would start. I did want to say too, I realized when I was doing my stats that sometimes I talked about billion when it should have been million. So forgive me for that. I was just super excited about podcasts, so I gave them billions more than they had. So we'll get there, don't worry. So I feel like a little bit of Austin Powers, 1 billion podcasts. So good reference there. I hope you like that. So I know some of you also were interested. I had a couple of comments, questions about personal podcasts. And I think that's great. I think you should. I think everybody, if you have something to say, then you should find an outlet for it. That may be a podcast, maybe a Substack, it may be something like that, but find a place to do that. And so, I would think that question first. What do you have to say? What are you passionate about? I say this all the time for people that particularly have a teaching gift, and I'm not talking about just, preaching and all these kinds of things. I'm talking about you like to teach people how to do stuff. I think YouTube is a great example of all the how-to videos in the world. You can find out how to do anything because somebody was like, I really want to show people how to do this. And so if you have that, it makes you come alive to teach other people. So when you learn a new skill, you want to teach people, and it teaches you. I remember when I first started teaching guitar to little kids, I became such a better guitar player because I had to figure out what I was actually doing, and then I actually taught it. So podcasts are a great opportunity to do that. I want to share my views on this, or I want to teach you how to do this, or this sort of thing. I mean, by teaching you about podcasting, I've learned so much. Like all my research, I feel like I'm a better podcaster now. Thank you. And so I think that's a great place to start. And I think also, finally, particularly for personal podcasts, interview-style podcasts where you interview people in a field. Say you interview pastors. It opens up a whole new world to you to meet people that you otherwise would not meet. Even sometimes people with some notoriety and things like that. Who are the top people in a particular field? Oftentimes, they'll come on your podcast. You will be shocked, and you will have an opportunity to spend like an hour talking to them, picking their brain, and sometimes those relationships even develop beyond that because they begin to respect you because of your questions and your research and your interest in what they're doing. I'm telling you, even the most famous authors in the world like to talk about their book. They spent years writing it, and the fact that someone's interested and they read it, and they're like, on Chapter 4 on page 54, you said this. Did you really mean that? I'm telling you, there is not, even from the most famous to the least famous person, who's not like, oh, wow, you want to talk about page 54? I love page 54, as a matter of fact. They're going to engage with you. And so that's a great way to enter into that. So I encourage you, don't be afraid of that. Do that, learn something, and meet new people. It's a great, great way to do that. Speaking of that, one more point on that is my prayer podcast. I couldn't find what I was looking for. I was searching the podcast directories. I was looking for something that used sort of the daily office, but with a contemporary style. And so what I did, I never could find it, so I decided to make it. That's how I started. There's a great author, Austin Kleon. He said, if you can't find the book you're looking to read, you should write it. And that should be your test. That should be your question. So if you can't find the podcast you're looking for that you want to listen to, then you should make it. That's a calling to you, as a matter of fact. So hopefully use this as a little nudge today. So I think that's about it. Was there anything else that came in? 3 new questions I hear. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. So we have Jim says, this is my introduction to podcasting. such a newbie, I thought it was audio only. Don't be surprised. A lot of people think that, not just newbies. Don't worry. Will the recording of this podcast be available so I can review it? Absolutely, there is. If you registered for this webinar within the next couple of days, you'll get an email. It'll have my slide deck as a PDF, and also I'm going to include a notes PDF that has all these links I've talked about and any notes that weren't in the slide deck as well. And also we're going to put my email, and please feel free to email me. I'd love to engage with you and answer any questions that I can. I definitely don't know everything, but I'm more than happy to find out if I can, because we also have a lot of people here at MyCom that are well versed in podcast, and I go to them and say, hey, how should we do this? And so definitely it will be available. Let's see. What is the best programs that you would recommend for artwork, for a cover, for lack of a better term, for your podcast, whether you're doing audio or video? Okay, this is great. I use the Adobe suite of products, the Creative Suite, okay? But you do not have to invest in that. Canva is a great option, and as a matter of fact, the templates they have podcast templates, okay? So you can start from there. It will help you make a logo. It is probably the place to start. Adobe has a free version called Adobe Express that's kind of the competitor to Canva, so if you'd like to start there, you can. But I would, if you're brand new and you're just starting and you don't have a lot of graphic design experience, I would probably go to Canva, and I would look up their templates, and they even have, if you like it, you can upgrade and do all kinds of things for there. So that's what I would suggest. Also, don't discount having friends who are graphic designers. You can collaborate together, and they can find an outlet for their work as well. Let's see. What programs would you recommend to help edit video in your podcast? So I'm probably going to recommend, if you're on a Mac, Final Cut or iMovie, because just like Logic and GarageBand, it's like the pro version and the consumer version, the same thing goes for iMovie and for Final Cut, okay? So they're both really easy to learn in the sense of YouTube will teach you how to do anything you want to do. And so that's what I would suggest there. I would say probably Premiere, the Adobe Premiere program on Windows. Now, I will say there are a lot of up-and-coming programs that I'm not as familiar with because I learned how to use those big programs years ago. But for editing social video, DaVinci is free. Yes, that's another great option. But also, like, some of the stuff online, like CapCut and some of these social editing programs, they're not bad. They're geared toward that. I think Canva and a couple of other online things have some basic video editing. And in the beginning, that might be something you're looking for. So I would suggest any of those. But I'm a Final Cut Pro user. I've been for years. So you get into your program and you start using it. But there are a lot of options out there. Okay, let's see. This is a great question. What type of mic should I use to pick the congregation? I think this question is, what type of mic should I use to pick up the congregation? Okay. So for a sermon like that, I would probably use, this is a pretty affordable mic too, and you can find dupes of it that are there, but like the Rode NT5, that would be one that I would choose. That's a great mic for sort of crowd and larger, like if you're just trying to pick up the stage, say you have a music group that you want to pick up, not individually, but all together. I would probably choose that. I would have to do a little bit of research to do that for you. I'm not as prepared on that. Those are just things off the top of my head. But there's Behringer, if you're in the audio world, sometimes they get a bad rap, but they have really affordable versions of more expensive things. So if you take the Rode NT5, it's going to cost you, I think, $300 or $400. You can get the Behringer version of that for like under $100. And that might be a good entry-level thing to do if you're trying to do. And what I would do probably for a congregation is find a place where I could do two of them together. We call it like a stereo pair. You can either do it as an XY or you can do it like this. And that'll give you a stereo version of the congregation. And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how good that could be. Let's see. Absolutely. Thank you guys. I think we're at our time there. And like I said, please feel free to email me. I think that's going to be in the information, but bward@umcom.org if not. And so I'd love to engage with you. Thank you so much for this. This has been great. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. I hope this is helpful to you. And I hope out of this that we get some more great podcasts and we have some really great stuff that really hits and engages with people and enhances your community and enhances the world that we live in. We need you. We need your voice. So thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you to MyCom. I hope that you have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.